On April the 30th, 2010, we were finally ready to set off from my berth at the Royal Harwich.
It's a way of good place.
We were hardly past Pen Mill when this lot appeared. We thought we were in trouble when they put the rib in the water, but fortunately it disappeared down the river towards Shotley. The cranes at Felixstowe dominate the skyline for miles around. You never seem to be able to get away from them. To avoid the traffic in the main channel, we edged over towards Shotley Marina with this conspicuous old water tower from HMS Ganges above it. The Red Schooner is a converted RN Harbour patrol boat, but I've never seen her move in the last 20 years. In the background are the various contraptions used for building a wind farm. The pilot launches operate out of this little harbour. There has been a fort on the site of Langard Point ever since the time of Henry VIII, but the current building dates from 1871. Our plan was to sail anti-clockwise to avoid the long beat-down channel against the prevailing westerlies. The pilot book advised arriving in the Orkneys at Neeps, so we planned on setting off from Harwich at the top of Springs, allowing 7 days to get there. In the event, it became clear that the large blocking area of high pressure over the continent that was bringing down clouds of volcanic ash from Iceland was going to bring northerlies for an extended period. So at the last moment we changed our plan and decided to go round clockwise. We had planned to leave the boat at Oban and catch a Glasgow EasyJet flight back for a week. We still intended to catch the Glasgow flight, but now intended to leave the boat at Troon. This meant that our first leg was across the Thames estuary. It looks easy on Google Earth, but it's anything but. There are numerous options when choosing a route. The one I use I have added in grey. This ideally involves departing Harwich Harbour 2 hours before low water. Follow the Medusa Tunnel past the Naze and north of the Gunfleet and Sunk Sands before turning up Black Deep with a flood underneath you until Fulgar's Ghat. If you make good time, the tide is slack or only just turning at North Foreland, giving a total passage time from Harwich Breakwater to Ramsgate of from 5 to 6 hours. The Gunfleet Sands wind farm was already complete, and they were about to start work on the London Array. Because of our change of plans, we were not setting off at anything like the ideal time for crossing the Thames. We left Harwich at the top of the tide and made good progress as we headed east across the top of the Gunfleet and Sunk Sands, with 7.5 knots of boat speed, losing only a knot over the ground to the early ebb. By the time we hardened up into Black Deep, the wind was southwesterly and the spring ebb had really got going. Despite doing 6 knots through the water, by the time we reached Black Deep number 4, our ground speed was down to 2 knots. Eventually the tide began to ease and we were able to make progress and bear away down Fulgar's Ghat for North Foreland. We docked at 10 o'clock, having logged 64 miles and spent 10.5 hours on a passage where I would normally expect to log about 50 miles and take 6 to 7 hours. I have always regarded Ramsgate as a full-tide harbour, so I was surprised when Harbour Control asked what our draft was when we called for permission to enter. Since our last visit, it had silted up badly. We just scraped in with 2.1 metres on the pontoon, but fairly soon the echo sounder read 1 metre. Half our keel was firmly embedded in the mud. The 1st of May was grey, wet and windless. I checked the depth at 7:30, but it was only 1.5 metres and falling. We were not going anywhere for a while. That did not seem to stop the RNLI, who at 9 o'clock brought in this miniature square-rigged sail trading ship that had lost its rudder in the estuary. By the look of the water it was stirring up, the props must have been running in the mud. Our original plan had been to push on to Eastbourne, but the mud held us firmly in place for too long to make that a realistic option. So we left at 10:45 and settled for a short motor up the Gull Channel, inside the good winds, to Dover, against the tide again. This was one of those days for switching on the autohelm and hiding under the spray hood. The eastern entrance to Dover is always busy with ferry traffic. Harbour Control will let lots in, but it can be a long wait. We opted to endure the backwash from the harbour wall and carry on outside to enter at the western end, which is much quieter. We logged 24 miles for a 4-hour passage. We were allocated to the visitors' pontoon before the lock gates, which meant there would be no restriction on departure time for next day. Just to prove that we didn't always go and eat out, try and save a bit of money. After we'd eaten, Matthew started writing up his blog before we went ashore to get a pint for the evening.